You're watching Public Comment every Thursdays at 8 a.m. The live stream. Detroit is different and Bridge Detroit. Local politics of Detroit. Welcome back to another episode of Public Comment. I am Khary Frazier of Detroit is Different, and every week we are usually talking 8 a.m. Thursdays. What's happening really from city council meetings, but even now, really like meetings inside community. And with me for this, Malachi, how you doing today?
Good morning. I'm doing good. It's 8 a.m. It's dark outside. Winter is upon us.
Yes.
It's getting colder, but we're staying positive. We're getting some insulation in my house fixed.
There we go.
Things are happening.
There we go. Yes. It's like, that is like, what's those commercials? It's like, you are becoming your parents. That's definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
But as we talk about different things like that, we got a lot of community talk today. Community talk that, how do we put this? Community talk that people often talk about. It's a housing development coming over to the east side community near the Butzel Recreation Center. City development plan, $24 million housing project proposed by Arrive Community Development and Ethos Development Partners. The location is a surface parking lot of Butzel Family Recreation Center and adjacent to a playfield. The goal is affordable housing, retail along the commercial corridor that's over there in Kirchville. The project features 4-story mixed-use buildings, 48 housing units. You all can kind of read the rest, but it's really supposed to focus on affordable housing, which is definitely needed. The community over there, where I know a lot of people, and we'll get to that shortly, but let's at least kind of look at the lens more so from the development side. And it was a community talk actually Tuesday night about this. You attended the talk. Before we get to kind of community's perspective on this, Malachi, what's the developer's perspective on this?
Yeah. So, and I guess just to give some people some context about how projects like this kind of land on my radar, because there's a lot of similar kind of housing being done across the city. We don't get to all of it. This might be actually a good note for readers. You can reach out to me and tell me about a project. I heard about this because Toya Watts over at the Charlevoix Village Association has been involved in some of the the planning feedback conversations between the developer and community for the last few months. She had some concerns about the project, put it on my radar, told me, hey, there's a meeting Tuesday night at the rec center. You should come check it out. I live pretty close to this area, so actually rode my bike over there to check it out after the city council meeting. But Toya and a group of folks also came down to council on Tuesday and expressed some of their concerns about it. So from the council perspective, this may be the first that they're hearing about it. This is how a lot of issues kind of pop up on our radar normally. A squeaky wheel, a resident who has a concern, makes it known and then brings some attention on it. So what I learned from developers last night, this is a new nonprofit, Arrive Community Development. It was created in January, basically to respond to this RFP. Zach Kilgore, who's the executive director, has been doing nonprofit development for a while. This would be their first project. The city has been looking at this parking lot next to the rec center, basically, I don't know, probably like 100 yards from the intersection of Van Dyke and Van Dyke and Kirchville. For a couple of years now, at least going back to the Greater Villages framework plan that was made in like 2018, I think released in 2020. This was a site that the city has long thought should have some housing on it, maybe some retail, particularly something that would combat the rising rental rates in the area. So was able to find documentation going back for a few years saying the city wanted affordable housing on the site. They put out a request for developers. This nonprofit stepped forward and said, hey, we've got a plan. And now we know a lot of the details of that plan. It's a 4-story building, 48 units. It would have a gym and a community center and some other amenities like that for the tenants. There's 4 retail spots along the ground level. I guess the headline here is that they are pitching this as like an anti-gentrification project. We'll talk about the community's perspective. A lot of it kind of hinges around whether this will, add to the strain, the cost strain that people have for housing in the area. But the developer plans to hit 30 to 80% of the area median income. which is between 21 grand and about 64 grand for a single person. They want to hit the lower end of that, and they're going to use the fast track pilot tax breaks that we've talked about on this show that were authorized by the council last year. So basically they would pay a percentage, I think it's like 1% of their the revenue from their rent would go as a tax instead of paying, your normal property taxes. So they're looking for a subsidy for this. I guess one thing that I took away from was that most of the units, 33 out of the 48 are 1 bedroom, and they're about 650 square feet. So I think a lot of the conversations that we hear about housing are, we need more 2 and 3 bedroom units for families, and they need to be bigger to accommodate, multiple people and children. The developer said the intent here is to provide housing for single parents with kids. There's a specific need, like the most housing insecure people in the city are single women with children. They are most likely to become unhoused and most likely to be living in substandard housing conditions, according to reports that the city's put out. So, does that address the concern there, saying this is specifically for, this group of folks? I still think people are just wanting to see larger units that people can stay in for a long time instead of these kind of single bedroom units that kind of turn over. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a couple options for parking that they're talking about. It seems like access to Butzel Playfield is going to be, more or less unchanged. That parking lot in the front probably won't be as accessible. They're going to reconfigure some of the parking on the site to put a lot in there in the front. Most likely, they were showing a couple of different plans for the parking spaces. And Khary, stop me if I'm getting too in the weeds here, but
I think,
but it sounds like the park is going to remain, accessible. I think there's concerns about the recreation center being accessible as well.
Yeah,
working through all those things. This project's still probably like a year or two away.
Yeah, and see, that's the community questions that I've already heard. Toya Watts, one of the largest voices that there is in community, definitely, speaking on behalf of a lot of her neighbors. It's like, okay, you want this, but why this parking lot and this other spaces and places where this could be? That's like some of the big questions that community has. The displacement worry, residents fear limited access to the rec center and neighborhood disruption. You already talked about it. Toya Watts is like preserving public access, gentrification concerns about some of the developments that have been over there, and also some concerns about the congestion that it'll cause for the school, the Garvey Academy that's over there. It's other suggestions in that same neighborhood and in that footprint. Martin White's, density buzzword threatens unique character. Some different people that all kind of come to play with this. The thing about that 48214 neighborhood is there are a lot of other pockets where this development could be. So it's like, why so close to this rec center? And that rec center really stands as one of the key and only like gathering places. That community is one that was definitely hit with a lot of school closures over there. So like the community space and the way that a lot of the people that have lived there engage with that rec center is completely different than like some of the new neighbors that have come over there to that like West Village footprint. And that's really the like, okay, it's other spaces and places where this could be. And that seems to be the key question, as there are some other what we say, residential, commercial, like on the first floor spaces and places around there that are not fully occupied. And, this will provides like more affordable housing than some of those other spaces. Some of the conversations that are happening right now are really like, okay, why can't we look at another space and place in this neighborhood for this to take place, as opposed to like, already connecting to this rec center that's like more operational, definitely of the community for a lot of seniors. That Butzel Center, I mean, it almost like functions as a center for conversations, talks, even kind of has like a small library and artistry. It's something that the community over there really appreciates. So limited access to that impacts some of the flow of the community. And this is the space in place for those talks and conversations. What was it feel like last night at the discussion? Because we record this on Wednesday, so Tuesday night's discussion. What was that like over there, as far as like some of the community in speaking about this plan that you heard?
Yeah, so after hearing about it and seeing folks come down to the council on Tuesday, I wanted to spend some time Tuesday evening at the community meeting to see, how what I was hearing, if it lined up with what other folks in the neighborhood thought, and definitely talk to the developers. I think what you're saying there about why here is something I heard a few times. The answer to that probably is, going back to what I had said earlier, the city has kind of flagged this commercial corridor, is the terminology we use, along Kercheval as like, wanting to bring back a lot of the commercial activity and housing along that stretch of land. And they've coordinated a lot of investment there in the last, I don't know, decade or so. I think the city has said like $30 million has been invested there, in between being within a strategic neighborhood fund area where Invest Detroit has put, philanthropic dollars in, but they redid the streetscape along Kercheval Avenue. They upgraded the bike lanes. They added these bus islands, kind of coordinated alongside the recreation center. There's a strip of bars and restaurants and boutiques and a barbershop and some pretty popular spots like Sister Pie and Marrow on the other side of the street there. And so some of the intent is to make that stretch further west. The more east you go, that just turns directly into Indian Village and the neighborhood areas. So, this is a city-owned lot. This is the city's vision for this area. When it doesn't line up with what folks in the neighborhood want, I think it becomes very difficult to kind of turn that train around, because from the city's perspective, they've been doing planning and engagement around this kind of concept of having more housing along Kercheval for a few years now. But that rec center, I do think, people have right concerns about the accessibility. They would add more parking in the back. So it's not like they would completely get rid of like parking there, but it's used as a early voting location. There's city offices in there. I actually remember Mayor Duggan cast his vote there in 2022, I think. The Board of Ethics is in the rec center, so there's some offices in there as well. When we went in Tuesday night, there were dance classes happening. There's a really nice gym that they added. So that rec center is definitely a resource for the area. I just think folks are generally hesitant about new housing developments like this.
And this actually kind of goes into an interview I just had with Brenda Butler about that community advisory commission council that really would sit in that space, because 4 and 5 are districts that have them. She even informed me that was one of those votes that took place as the council by district took place, and it's not CAC for every district throughout the city of Detroit. It's one of those things. It's coming up on the election now, but these are write-in positions, so you have to write in who you're voting for. But that's where it's like, okay, if you're having these talks with community, who in community are you talking to? Definitely over there in that footprint, it seems like Toya Watt should have been a part of whatever discussion that's happening there.
Yeah, from my understanding, she was part of this steering committee, I guess you could call it. I forget the exact term that they used, but the developer tried to apparently reach out to some folks, and Toya was among them. But there was actually a writing candidate last night for the CAC in District 5 at the meeting. Renata Miller showed up at the end as well, who's running for city council in District 5. I didn't get a chance to talk to her about what she thought about this, but
that's kind of her neighborhood too, the Indian Village footprint. And these are like some of those discussions about, the community benefits ordinances and agreements that do exist, and how does that look, and then what's reasonable terms for that developer to talk to a community, who in the community they're talking to, and how this functions. And then like if the community and the developer aren't on the same page, what's the recourse? What happens? Creo keeps a lot of those stats on stuff like this, and then tracking and making sure that is met. So I believe some of those residents just are like, okay, man, it could be someplace else. That's where it is. And then I guess like if you're saying like, okay, let's just stretch out more of that Kercheval,
I think Genesis
commercial
Hope
district
owns a lot of the land because that's not the only, it's a parking lot, but it's not the only like vacant parcel along Kercheval. The more west you go toward Mount Elliott, there's several, big fields. Apparently they're owned by some other groups instead of the city. So that's part of probably why
the reasoning
selected there as well. Instead, I mean, somebody last night was like, you can go half a mile away and John Hance owns 3 blocks of of trees basically. So there's other places maybe to put this. But I think there's a generational divide there, or a newcomers and old timers kind of being on different sides. Because when I talked to some younger residents who are newer to the area, who tended to be whiter than like the long time
you got that
we're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm basically in that group. I mean, I live like 2 miles away from here, so just to be transparent there, obviously. But some of the younger folks that I talked to that were newer to the neighborhood wanted to see more density. They wanted to see more activity along that commercial.
I got to speak because I've been in this discussion and heard like when things like this happen, it's like they're not the people that are using the rec center the most either. So it's like one of those things where, it's like, hey, I love to see that, but they're not necessarily utilizing the resource that is there as one of those few spaces. Like I say, when I grew up years ago, I mean, there was so many schools and different spaces over there that could be used for things like that. Like now, if I think of something happening in 48214, you need to gather people, that Butzel Recreation Center probably stands like far above many other spaces and places over there. If you want to have that discussion between, people in Indian Village and people in other parts of the neighborhood, it's, I guess you have places like the Shepherd and some new things coming together like that, but that's not as inclusive and definitely does not feel as welcome to community as what that rec center feels like now, for people to be like, okay, I know the people over at the rec center, I can go over here, we can gather. And it is actually one of the places where you have a lot of parking if you want to do something for a community. So to shift this, though the city owns it, that's kind of where the like getting on the same page does come to life, broader context of the implications. We have like the average rent for 1,300 square foot flat in the area has doubled. So this is definitely one of those communities, like a lot of communities, where rents are extremely high. The corridor has some different spaces and places that you already kind of talked about, and I'm listing from there. And more so, it's how will it affect as the longtime Black residents, and we were just kind of talking about that. And
a key part of that to kind of connect to what you're saying about the rec center, because there were one of the newer residents there that I was talking to actually didn't really know much about the rec center at all. Kind of to your point, it's not at least this one person doesn't use it and was like, wow, there's actually like a lot of cool stuff here, maybe I should come back. But also, there's this feeling that the growth that the city wants to maintain and build upon, that existing growth has not really benefited some of the longtime residents. In terms of like Barkside is an example of like a business that folks are like, what is this for? This feels like it's kind of this little like trendy thing. I mean, no offense to the people that run that place, I've been there once. It's like a dog park kind of bar thing. I just think that like the existing businesses that are there are not really what longtime residents, I think, are more interested in the rec center as opposed to like continuing this growth that like they already don't really seem to like, or find much use for. Although some of those businesses like Marrow and some of what's been going on with like La Fonda's a new restaurant that opened on that street. Two Birds is a bar that is has an ice cream place next door, and now there's like a clothing resale store. So I think some of those things are like also drawing people to the area. But I thought this was good to talk about on the show because this is the exact kind of stuff that's like happening all over the city. Who's benefiting from this growth? And we're going to probably see more of these kinds of debates as the city considers rezoning residential areas to bring in more density. And so density as a concept and, what are the winners and losers when we bring density to neighborhoods is going to be a big conversation point. And it's interesting, the perspective of people that have seen like depopulation in their area and they want, folks to kind of return, but they also don't want it to like really fundamentally change what they enjoy about the neighborhood. And I think it's a tricky proposition, right?
It's definitely something that how that's going to happen. Tip has to the politicians, but also the people in community and like, existing in these spaces. And kind of on to like the next story, which is along the way of keeping people there. It's really not even necessarily a story as much as like a notice. You can apply for the top property tax exemption by November 7th. So that's really coming up very soon. There are going to be some resource fairs tomorrow, Friday, and the day after tomorrow, Saturday. So Friday is Northwest Activity Center, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Saturday is at Perfecting Church. This is really based on homeowners' income. You obviously must own and live in your home. And one of the things that a lot of people are like, why do I have to continue to keep reapplying for this? I'm sure it's a reason where you've heard about this, but definitely people are key on this because property taxes are one of those issues for Detroiters that consistently are it's always brought up, especially after like overassessed taxes, and it's still like kind of like a looming feeling that a lot of Detroiters have, though the city has said that that's not happening. The property taxes are already kind of taken care of, that's in the past. A lot of discussions. You've definitely read a lot of reports on property taxes, but I love that you put this in here so that people know. And then also another thing that's big on this is people feel as though it's like such a short window that you can contest what your property tax assessment is and looking for this exemption. I don't know what you got to add to this, but it's like kind of keeping people where they're at. Kind of.
Yeah. I mean, I think the HOPE exemption is like the number one way to reduce your property taxes if you qualify. It's a really important tool to prevent eviction and foreclosure. And there's resource fairs that are being held. If this is like the first time you're hearing about it, I would recommend you go. There's one on the 24th at the Northwest Activity Center. Again, highlighting the importance of rec centers in Detroit. And then there's one on the 25th at Perfecting Church. So yeah, those are opportunities to go learn more, from the Detroit Housing Network, Wayne Metro, UCHC, and some of the groups that help people navigate that process. So yeah, I don't know. My only thing to add would be go sign up if you qualify. Go see if you qualify.
All right. And with that, we're at a close for this edition of Public Comment. Make sure you stay watching us on Detroit is Different, some more of these discussions. And remember, like Tamesa will be back, but right now she's down there in the state with the red clay in Georgia, stomping the grounds and everything. And you have, if you have not checked it out, an interview with Mary Sheffield that's up for Detroit Next, another partnership between Detroit is Different and Bridge Detroit. And we actually have Solomon Kinlock scheduled for an interview today. So that'll be aired pretty soon too, as far as making up those decisions for what's happening in the mayoral race. Malachi, talk to the people.
BridgeDetroit.com is where you can find all of our free reporting. BridgeDetroit.com. We do not have a paywall, and we want to keep it that way. So if you can kick in a couple of bucks to support us, that's great. If not, no worries. We also have some foundations supporting us, so we don't necessarily need to rely on people putting $5 on it. But we are doing a lot. We've been doing a lot this year to cover the elections. We're a really small team. So shout out to the Bridge Detroit team for making this happen. I don't know if people realize this. We have like 2 full-time reporters. Our other reporter right now is doing a long project with ProPublica. So she's not doing daily reporting. So it's like, it's me and one other person trying to keep this news operation going, at least in terms of reporters. We got some editors and folks helping out as well. But if you like what we're putting out there, definitely consider supporting us because we're a small, scrappy team trying to keep everybody informed in a really critical time in a weird time,
Mhm.
in a time where people are more probably confused and misinformed than ever. So
Ah,
support our work.
yes, most definitely. With that being said, till next time, peace. You're watching Public Comment every Thursdays at 8 a.m. The live stream. Detroit is different and Bridge Detroit. Local politics of Detroit.